This spooky little scene has it all. There's a haunted house, a full moon, headstones emerging from the mist, and of course a ghost. You don't need many colours for this one. I used black and white, Winsor Newton's brilliant purple, and a touch of primary yellow. Begin by painting a gradient for the background. Here I'm using a 1/2 inch angled flat brush and applying a dark purple mixture in rough overlapping strokes towards the top of the page. When you mix your colour, add just a tiny amount of white to your dark purple mixture. The white gives the purple a soft cloudiness that works well with the foggy scene, and it'll make it easier to blend the colours together. Make the purple lighter with a little more white as you move down the page until you've covered the whole background area. Use a small amount of white gouache on the tip of your nearly dry brush and slightly rounded scrubbing strokes to add some horizontal bands of fog on the ground. Keep this concentrated on the lower half of the page. About halfway up on either side, we'll add some simple bush silhouettes. I'm using a size 4 round brush. Do this with a slightly darker purple than your background here. We don't want them to be too dark, but we don't want them to be too visible either. In the distance we can paint our haunted house, and for this I used a very dark purple, almost black, and I find it easiest to use a liner brush to paint the outline before filling it in with the dark colour. To show that the lights are on in our spooky house, we can use some primary yellow mixed with white to boost the opacity to show the warm glow spilling from the windows. The tip of a liner brush is great for these tiny details. Right now our house is kind of hovering, so we can use a little bit of white gouache on a dry brush to scrub in some fog around its base. Every haunted house needs some spooky bare trees, so use the same dark mixture as the house and a liner brush to add these. Here I've added one to either side. And of course the garden needs a sprinkle of family headstones. These can be whatever shapes you like, but make sure to make them larger as you move down the page. To frame our spooky scene, we'll add some details here in the foreground. Do this with your dark purple mixture, and don't worry too much if it mixes a little with the lighter purple underneath. This just helps to add texture. Use a liner or small round brush to paint a rickety fence. And then add the silhouette of a big gnarly old tree. I've added a broken branch and some twisty tree roots snaking along the ground. You can add a few branches leaning in from the other side too, or even another tree if you prefer. Even ghosts like a furry little companion or two, so we can add a cluster of bats flying from the belfry. Use a little white gouache to add some fog around the base of the headstones. And add a full moon to the sky. Let the white gouache mix a little with the dark background here to give the moon some dimension. While our moon dries, let's add our ghost. For this, we don't want the paint to be too opaque, so we want to use a watery mixture, but with only a little bit of paint on a dryish brush. We don't want to be adding big watery drops of paint for this. Use a liner brush to outline the head and the arms before filling in the trailing wispy shape behind. Use the angle across the top of the arms and the direction of the wispies to show the direction our ghostly friend is drifting. Once you're happy with the shape, you can add another layer of the weak white mixture to brighten him up a little. Give your ghost a minute to dry and add a little misty haze around your full moon and across the sky. Use a touch of white to brighten up one side of the moon and also across the head and arms of the ghost. We can give our twisty tree a little dimension by adding some highlights. Use a round or a liner brush to add a few lines of pale purple to the trunk. I know this looks odd, but you've just got to trust the process here. Let your stripes of highlight dry and then use a clean damp filbert brush to blend these marks into the dark of the tree. Keep these brush strokes in line with the marks to get some really cool streaky effects that look way more complicated than they actually are. Finally, we can use our dark purple and a liner brush to add a few grassy weeds around the bottom of the fence and the tree.